it's unlikely to me that this decision doesn't come with the support of Kevin Durant. Now, Sean Marks was obviously asked about that yesterday, and he made it clear that this was a decision that was a final choice by the owner, Joe Tsai, and himself, the general manager. But they had a path forward where they could have tried this with Kyrie, especially after the change to the law and that they would have allowed him to practice. That would have at least given them a chance to work together and not had him going through 10, 12 days at a time, depending on how the schedule went, where they couldn't put their hands on him. They couldn't see him together. I mean, it's not an ideal way to play, but if it was something that Durant and Harden said, we've got to do this, I think the Nets, based on the way they've made decisions in the past, would have. So we haven't heard from Kevin and James yet, but to me, that's the big takeaway, because there's really been no bigger ally in the NBA over the last few years for Kyrie than Durant. And so if this is a crossing of the Rubicon there, I think that's important to note.
Brian, I heard you on one of the shows, I forget because you're on so many these days breaking down things, but you hit the nail right on the head, because it would just disrupt the style in which they played. And you know this, just like doing TV, it's all about reps. So those reps that you would get for Patty Mills or Joe Harris, all these other players, all of a sudden those reps become limited when Kyrie's on the floor for spotty amounts of time. The question that I found myself thinking about a ton is talking to some GMs across the league. A lot of people are extremely hesitant to make a trade for Kyrie. Not sure if he's going to retire, even if he does have availability to play other places other than Brooklyn. So it leaves to bear the question for this organization, what the hell do you do? Do you just sit in your hands for a year and hope that somewhat the laws change in time? What would you say they're going to do?
Well, let's just talk about the trade concept for a second, because I know that that's where fans would kind of go to here. And so, first off, you have to realize Kyrie only has 1 year left on his contract. He has a player option he can pick up. But if you're going to trade for a guy like Kyrie, especially if you're going to trade for him at a place where he may not necessarily want to stay, he picked Brooklyn for a reason. You face the reality that he could opt out of his contract and leave, whether that's to go be on a commune somewhere or whether that's to go sign with another team. So when you make an offer, I mean, let's just say hypothetically he was available. You can't offer a kind of package that would indicate you're getting a player for multiple years. This is the exact inverse of Ben Simmons. This is why the Ben Simmons trade would be a fascinating one. Ben Simmons has 4 years guaranteed, no opt-outs. If you traded for Ben Simmons, you know that he'd be there, assuming he reports. And so the risk for trading a player like Kyrie, even in the best of times, with 1 year on his contract, is very high. And then you have the reality that, let's say he gets traded somewhere where there's a city government or a county government that may enact its own vaccine mandate, where you might end up exactly in this situation that the Nets are in. So really, the Kyrie only really, in my view, has 3 ways forward, 2 of them likely. 1, he gets vaccinated and rejoins his team, which seems unlikely at this point. 2, he waits for the conditions to change with COVID, the Delta variant to pass us and no other variant to come, and New York relaxes the mandate. There is going to be a mayoral change in New York coming up. Maybe something like that happens there. Or 3, he could retire. I think that's unlikely. But, that's really the hand here. I don't think the trade, it makes a lot of sense.
Wendy, what will the Nets do, though, in the time being until he returns? What are they going to do to move things forward?
Well, they're going to deploy 2 MVPs, which is a pretty nice thing to have. And, in the offseason, I thought they made a great signing Patty Mills. Now, let's be clear here. Patty Mills is not Kyrie Irving. Patty Mills is a, high-level backup, a starter for, a handful of teams in the league. And so you have a guy, and whether they start him or not without Kyrie, we'll see. But you have a guy who you can play 25, 30 minutes and know he can play a high level. And they've got a bunch of veterans on this team. They've got a bunch of shooting on this team. They are still going to be very, very potent. Certainly a championship contending team without Kyrie. So I think they're going to end up doing a lot of winning. But look, if you want to win at the highest level in the NBA, you go out there and look at the best teams. You need all your firepower. And this team was designed to compete for championships with Kyrie Irving. So they're not the same team without him, but because especially that they have Patty Mills, they're going to be a very good team, no matter how long he stays away.
So a lot of people, speaking of championship contending teams, the Philadelphia 76ers, over the last couple of days has been saying, hey, Ben Simmons is reporting to camp. Doc Rivers said, I might have to call Woj to get on top of that one. But I heard something interesting yesterday, Wendy, that I want your opinion on, because a lot of people say, well, he's going to camp. Just because you're going to camp doesn't mean that you're actually going to participate and play. Have you heard anything about what's evolving with that situation?
Well, again, there's two things we have to watch. First off, Ramona Shelburne, my colleague, reported that Ben is going to be in health and safety protocols until Friday. He can't join team practice till Friday. Now, that implies, and I want to stress the word implies, that he is not fully vaccinated, because under the protocols that the league has, if you are fully vaccinated, you can pass one test and then join the team. He took a test on Monday. If he passed that and when met those protocols, he could theoretically join the team's practice today. So doesn't necessarily mean that he hasn't received heart vaccination or has received a shot and is waiting for it, but that's a factor. And if he can't rejoin the team until Saturday, that may delay his return. So that's a procedural thing. But what I think you're really asking, Jay, is the best question, which is, what kind of Ben Simmons are we going to see here? What is the next step in this poker game? Does he show up and go Jimmy Butler? Does he show up and play sort of half speed? Does he show up and say, I don't want to play at all? Because this really turned into an NFL-style holdout during this process, with Simmons having a contract and not showing up. That's an NFL thing. With the Sixers withholding money and putting it in escrow and fining that escrow, that's an NFL thing. And an NFL thing recently for players to fight back is to hold in, where they come but don't actually play. Now, I don't have an indication of what Ben is going to do, and I don't even know if the Sixers know what Ben is going to do. But the big thing is, what type of Ben Simmons will we see when he is fully rejoined his team? I know a lot of people are focused on the fan reaction and maybe even the player reaction.
I felt like I never saw James Harden get into his bag, Key. Rotations were really weird last night. Him and LaMarcus Aldridge, that chemistry is so far off. He has better chemistry with Nick Claxton than he does with LaMarcus Aldridge. And I started thinking last night, I'm watching, I'm like, all right, Mike D'Antoni's not there. It puts a lot more pressure on Steve Nash with a lot of the sets that they're doing with Jacques Vaughn. I do think that James Harden will eventually find it. But, there's some gaps here with this team, man. They're older. A lot of their bigs can't move the same way defensively. I I just Miami.
So you were there. You were courtside.
I was courtside. Miami is
there's
the best
Jay. There's
defensive
Jay-Z.
team.
Yeah.
Miami, Milwaukee Bucks are the two best defensive teams. The Knicks are probably there too in the Eastern Conference, but they swallowed them up last night. And I'm like, I wonder what this team could be with Kyrie. And that's the question you're going to start always asking.
I want to
James
talk
can
about
get in his
Kyrie.
bag. They can be there, but Kyrie is the missing piece for this team.
Let's talk about Kyrie.
Into the year, though.
Yeah, but still,
you got another 70-something games to go.
That's what I'm saying. I think they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But Kyrie is the missing link for them to be where they need to be.
Let's talk Kyrie.
Because he covers up a lot of these other issues.
A lot of people, including me, noticed with Boston, without Kyrie, they seem to be at least as good as they were with him. Hold on, you're as good as Kyrie is. You lose a player like that, and if anything, maybe you get a little better. Same thing with the Nets 2 years ago, right? Same thing. Or when he got to Brooklyn, it was like, wait a minute, why isn't the team much worse without Kyrie? If you pointed out then, you got to point out now that with Kyrie last year, without KD, just Kyrie and Harden, they were killing the game. And without Harden, but still with Kyrie and KD were smashing the Bucks. Kyrie does seem to be the missing ingredient on this team. Why do you think that is, Jay?
I think when you have offensive firepower like Kyrie, James Harden, and KD, it covers up a lot of the flaws. Because you're scoring at such a high clip all the time, right? Because they're so special of players. Now when one guy's off, it's a struggle for this team. What are the chances of two guys being off? Not high.
What about the fact that Kyrie has said publicly KD's the first scorer he's ever played with where he could defer because he's even better than him? And so, when he can play with KD, he can be a point guard. And with Harden, he gave Harden the ball, said, you're the point guard. So that frees up Kyrie to kind of just play loose and be himself.
What's the panic, though, here?
No, I don't think there's panic. I think that
because when you look at it, they've played 5 games,
mm-hmm.
right? You got so many more games to go that whether Kyrie's in the building or not, I would think that they're going to get it together. right? I don't think you think Minnesota's getting ready to do anything.
No.
And they're sitting at 3-1. You know, Chicago is undefeated, and Chicago will be a playoff team. But do you think Chicago could beat the Nets when they're fully geared up mid-year?
I think it'll be an interesting series.
Yeah, they'll lose an interesting
if Kyrie's
series.
not there, I think it'll be a very
An interesting series. But the Bulls are. I thought that since they made the offseason moves, they're going to be good.
There's no question with Zach LaVine and company, and Ball and Caruso over there now, and who am I missing?
DeMar DeRozan.
Guys, they
so they got a team. But I'm just saying, when you start to look at the Brooklyn Nets 4 or 5 games into the season, and their record is less than 500. Don't panic in this situation.
So can I tell you something else I saw last night?
Know?
I'm not panicking, but I did see a veteran world championship coach in Eric Spoelstra run circles around Steve Nash. And I think as you start getting deeper into basketball, the evolution of where Steve Nash goes as a head coach will determine how far I think the Nets can go as well.
Let's stay right there on the coach. So there are at least 3 layers with Harden. To his own admission, he hasn't really played pickup and gotten ready because he's rehabbing, right? So he's not where he wants to be. That's 1. 2, we mentioned Kyrie's absence and how, in a weird way, he's kind of the glue guy on this team. Legs and I were joking about this on the air yesterday. And now 3, and I'm not putting them in order of importance. I'm just saying here's another level. They had D'Antoni on the bench last year. You mentioned this, Jay. D'Antoni and Harden can roll out of bed. Here's the ball. We know how to do this, right?
Offensive genius.
D'Antoni is not there this year. How much of an impact is that having on Harden?
I think James Harden will be okay, but that familiarity and having a guy like that on the sideline that understands what positions of the floor he needs to put you in so you could be at your optimal best, I think is a huge missing thing. You know, talk about another huge missing piece. Jason Kidd, I think, is also another huge missing piece for the Los Angeles Lakers.
We're also struggling.
Frank Vogel is a defensive-minded coach. I don't think this team is going to have issues offensively, but still not having him there, I think there's something missing there, too, I think Jason Kidd could have unlocked the Russell Westbrook situation a lot sooner. It's still going to happen eventually, but I think he would have found ways to have these guys operate with LeBron and Russell on the floor. I'd much rather have Jason Kidd on that staff than having him be in Dallas. So, still very early. I get all this. I'm just talking about being in the trenches, seeing what you see as teams need to work through and how they need to get better, Keith.
Yeah, and even James Harden's shots last night were nice open looks. They just wasn't falling.
Yeah, there is something, though.
It was
Keith,
almost like it not out of shape, but not at the shape he needs to be this early in the season.
Can I geek out for 1 second? You know, sometimes when I hear you talk about the routes that you run, it's going to take a major adjustment by Harden not to play into contact. A lot of his game is suited around playing into contact all the time, and they're making it a huge stance in the league not to call that. And last night, I still see a lot of that from him. Like breaking arms, doing all that stuff, and they're not calling it, and he's looking like,
what's here?
Yeah, like if you guys can't see it because if you're in your car, but there's a pole, right? Like he will rake through arms, and the refs are looking at him like, we ain't calling that no more.
Right. So now 4 layers. He had to rehab 1, so he couldn't play enough. D'Antoni's not there is another. Kyrie's not there is another. And now they're enforcing the rules differently. Again, foul calls are supposed to be there so you get a flowing kind of game so the defense doesn't act up. Offensive players have manipulated the rule, just like in baseball. Hitters' work counts. Balls and strikes, walks are there to force the pitcher to throw strikes so we can watch guys swing the bat, not so we can watch them draw walks. No one wants to see guys draw walks or shoot free throws, right? But guys like James Harden have manipulated that gotten great at it.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.